Hey, today we're going to talk about relationships and exes again from the perspective of non-duality, awakeness, realness, openness. Um, I'm doing another video on this, and I hope it's useful. And if you're suffering now and you came upon this video, I'm sorry. You don't deserve to be suffering, and hopefully some of the things I say help you a little bit. Hopefully they help you a little bit and comfort you in some ways. Because you're a strong person and you're going to be okay for sure. You are going to be okay. You don't need to puss out on this. Keep it going. Keep moving forward. You're a tough man or woman, okay? And you know it deep inside. So, from a true non-dual perspective, from a awake perspective, talking about exes are tough. Very hard to talk about. And the reason is, in the awake world, they don't exist, right? They just don't exist. In effect, to even have a conversation about, like, if we're going to talk about an ex or your ex, we're not living in the physical realm anymore, in the awake realm anymore. I apologize. We're not going to be in the awake open realm anymore. We're going to be now talking about concepts, talking about ideas, pretty much words. That's concept, words, and symbols. That's what it's going to be, right? And imaginary thoughts. It's not going to be anything concrete anymore. So that's what makes it difficult to talk about exes, because whenever I think about or talk about things from a non-dualist or awake perspective, I only appeal to one thing, only one thing, and that's, what are you aware of in the present moment? The only thing that you have, the only evidence that you have. I don't tell you to, and I won't tell you to, and good teachers won't tell you to have thoughts in your mind, or start thinking about symbols or words or concepts, and just start thinking. They're not going to tell you to start thinking. They're going to tell you to be observant and aware. Be truly aware of the present moment. Okay? Be aware of the openness. That's just literally right there, right now. The openness. And that's what they're going to basically tell you to be aware of. Not thinking about things, right? So it's like talking about an ex is inherently thinking about them, right? Because say you haven't seen your ex, let's say 5 years you haven't seen them, right? Let's say 1 year. Let's say 1 year you just haven't seen them or contacted them. Well, think about all the other people you haven't seen in 1 year. Think about all the other people you haven't seen in 1 year, right? Those people are also not a part of your life, right? Quote unquote. The only reason you're still talking about your ex a year later is because you keep perpetuating this mental thing that's happening, right? But notice how pretty much everyone you haven't seen within the last year, right? So the group of people you have seen, take that group and take the whole world. Subtract that group, the people you've seen, and then there's the whole world left. All like 7 billion people that you haven't seen in the last year. You're not thinking about them. You're not aware of them. It sounds cliche and kind of obvious to say, but try to not think about what I'm saying, but try to feel it. Try to feel it. Wow, you're right. The 7 million people out there that I haven't seen in a year, 7 billion people, I'm not thinking about them. They're not in my existence. They're not in my life. If I tried to talk to you about them, it wouldn't even make sense. It would just be crazy. But about your ex, well, that's a whole different story, because you're now perpetuating this idea, this concept, this habit of, like, this thought. Basically, you're every day you're making the decision, consciously or unconsciously, to keep this thought alive, but there's no reality to it. Your actual reality in your actual world out there doesn't seem like there's anything there that's correlated to it. Of course, you may be connected in a mystical sense, in a spiritual sense, but that's a different story. Put another way, it's hard to explain the absurdity of talking about an ex from a non-dual perspective. I can't continue talking about it without talking about the absurdity of it. So that was one example. I'm gonna give another one, but I realize that these examples, they're not gonna. I can't. It's hard for me to articulate my own kind of, my own like amusement at the fact that I'm even doing this video. From a non-dual perspective, I'm trying to talk about an ex relationship. The only like approach you should take is just calm down, realize what's going on right now in the moment, and realize your ex literally doesn't exist. Literally, your ex does not exist. Period. Okay. Period. If they're not there right now with you, whoever it is doesn't exist if they're not there with you right now. Notice that. It's attainable like this. Like this. Immediately you could see it. You have to sometimes work your way up to it. That's the paradox. Sometimes it's not easy to see, but if you practice enough, you could see it, that everything is completely empty, and if something is not there, then it does not exist. If something is not there, it does not exist. Unfortunately. And fortunately, just the way it is. So if something's not in your awareness, it doesn't exist. So when we're talking about an ex, we're inherently talking about a concept. The same as if we talked about any other person or any abstract concept, right? Because it's purely a concept. If they don't exist, what are you talking about, right? Really, you can't say, oh, they exist somewhere else. When you see that they don't exist, you realize that the concept is just literally that. It's just a thought bubble that pops into your awareness, and there's nothing more to it. That, like, you think you've been for say you haven't talked to your ex for a year, you think like there's been something real in the world for a year, but in reality it hasn't. It's the same thing as you just having a thought. So put it one last way, put it a different way, one final way, and then we'll move on and talk about actually how to think about exes and exes from a non-dualistic perspective. Another way to think about it is, imagine your ex, right, man or woman or whatever. You're pining for them, you're missing them, you're longing for them. Imagine instead of appearing in your mind, right? Imagine they appeared in mine, and I have to use mine because I'm the one that, I could speak most clearly about my own mind, not about anyone else's. I could speak very accurately about mine, not like completely accurately, but quite accurately, and everyone else's I can't speak that much about. So that's why I'm using my own mind here. So imagine, I could tell you pretty accurately what would happen here. Imagine your ex appeared in my own mind. Say I was on the toilet in the morning, first thing in the morning. Your ex appears in my mind. What would I do? What would happen? Well, I think, strange, strange. This image of a man or a woman is appearing to me. Strange, unbelievable. I would be surprised why that's appearing to me, right? Someone I don't know, obviously, someone I've never met. And then I would have anxiety, right? This anxious feeling that you kind of maybe confuse for longing, but just this anxious, uncomfortable feeling. And I would have that feeling, and I would be like, I'm thinking about this person, I'm getting anxious. That's strange, and depends on my state. But if I didn't know the person, and if I was in a good place, in terms of just my awareness, my ability to recognize reality for what it is, I would say, hold on, I'm anxious, a little, just okay. Let me just observe what's happening, and I would just be aware of everything, and I would see that. No, this is just a thought appearing, and I would just wait. I would put my attention to my body. My body would just calm down, and I'd just move on from it. But for you, that doesn't happen that way. For you, when that happens, those two thoughts, those two things, the thought of the ex, and then this feeling in your body, whatever that feeling is, you put so much more to it, right? You just add so much to it, and you think it's so real. You really do. But in reality, it's not real for anyone else. And if you just paid enough attention to it, you'd realize that there's really nothing to it at all. Like the missing aspect, the longing, just nothing to it, unfortunately. They're pretty empty, pretty boring emotions. There's a lot more to be had just in looking at this. Actually, really, there's a lot more to be had in looking at this cup, drinking this coffee, and observing this real cup. You can have more joy, true interest, true, like, a true relationship in a sense with this cup itself by looking at it and observing it. And it can be deeply interesting and engaging, truly engaging, much more than with a thought. A thought is very low resolution, very, very low resolution of thought, right? And the longer you haven't seen your ex, the lower resolution it is. Look at how low resolution it is. So you're basically taking a low res. Try it. Think about your ex. Look how fuzzy the whole thing is. If you can pay enough attention to it, if you don't get lost in the entire process of it, and just lost and just going crazy. If you can actually keep a level head and see, oh wow, this is incredibly low resolution. It's the lowest resolution thing that exists, even. Maybe smell is higher resolution in a sense. You can't really compare smell to thinking, but thinking is pretty low resolution, I'm telling you. You think it's high, but it's not. Once you separate out thinking from feeling of the body, and you stop like being so much in your head, but you put your energy into the body, and you just live in the body, pay a little bit of attention to the body, you'll realize that what you're doing is you're just taking thoughts, like combining it with the body, adding a few other thoughts, and it's all empty. It's all like literally like cotton candy, except cotton candy is more nutritious and better for you. This has absolutely no calories and no value. It's just making you miserable. So that's what you're doing when you're thinking about an ex, basically, in my opinion. That's what's happening. And when you're saying, oh, I miss her, oh, I miss him, I'm longing for him. I'm longing for his, like, for his gaze, for his touch, whatever. You're not really doing that. That's just a story. It's like kind of cruel, right? For me to say you're not really doing that when you think you are. But like when I say you're not doing it, I don't mean that you're feeling okay or feeling good. You're feeling miserable. I'm just saying you're getting confused. You're getting confused. You're just wrapping everything in a bundle of thought, and you're just living in that, loving it, completely saying I'm blinded to everything else, completely saying I'm blind to every other like possibility, every other reality, just blinded by the most basic things in front of me. I'm only gonna approach it from this ultimately narrow, deeply narrow perspective, right? When you could just kind of let that go. Hard to do. I agree, hard to do. It takes practice from a meditation perspective, not emotionally hard to do. Just it's hard to focus. You need to meditate, and you need to probably do psychedelics to be able to kind of, we're so fucked up nowadays with our attention. We're so into the ego that we can't see things for what they are. But if you could, you'd see, oh wow, there's just a thought, this is just an emotion, no one really exists here. I haven't seen the person in a year. It's completely fake, it's completely false, there's nothing to this, and it would just evaporate. But it's very hard to do. But hard not in the sense of letting go of your partner or ex-partner. It's hard in the sense that you have to practice meditating to be able to have that awareness now. If you've lived your whole life thinking you're a person, an ego, you're gonna have trouble doing it. So it's tough, very tough to do that. That's why you need to meditate. That's why you need to, literally, that's why you need to meditate and have a meditation practice, a disciplined, robust, serious meditation practice. Everyone would be better off seeing what they really are and what reality really is. It would help everyone. So, okay, that's aside. Now we're jumping to the topic of so I don't even know where to begin. I talked a lot already. I feel that hopefully some of that was valuable. From a non-dualistic perspective, there may not be much meditation. Um, there may not be much a non-dualistic perspective is going to do to help you with your relationship. If you're feeling miserable, you're just going to continue feeling miserable, I think, unless you back off and realize what you really are, realize reality for what it is. It's not going to be, you're not going to find help within the like being the ego. That's not going to do it. Here. This is the main thing. This is my main thing that I wanted to get at. So, from a non-dual perspective, this is the main thing that I was leading up to. This will probably take shorter than the intro, actually, but this is key. The reason you're hurting, the reason you're hurting about your ex, is because of an identity issue. That's all it is. It's very clear. Now, before I started this, there's a lot of things I'm skeptical of and I'm not sure about. There's a lot of things I know and a lot of things I don't know. And there's things, that third layer, or things I don't know that I don't know, right? The list of things that I don't know, but I don't even know that I don't know them. So, blind spots, yeah, I agree. Everyone has them. So, I talk to myself. I'm like, dude, do you think are you qualified to make a video on this stuff? What the fuck do you know about this stuff? And I gave myself a head check. I actually did that throughout the weekend, planning to make this video. And I am qualified to talk about it, I realize. I've I've seen a lot in my life in terms of relationships. I've seen quite a bit, but that's not what makes me qualified. What makes me qualified is that I've seen it, and I've also kind of applied a non-dual perspective to it. So I think it's not that complicated. I think once you've seen enough, like just a basic level of seeing, like you just had a few relationships, you saw other people with relationships, how they react, and you've just seen your own ego develop, and then you've seen, oh, okay, I have an ego. It's not real. I don't really exist in that way. When you meditate or do psychedelics, it's not hard to put two and two together. So I'm not saying something profound. I'm saying something quite basic here, but it won't seem profound. It'll probably seem convoluted and like complex and just not real in a way to people who don't understand it. If you haven't kind of had the meditation or psychedelic experiences that I'm talking about, but um, if you have, it'll be clear. It'll be clear and easy, very easy. So, but either way, you could kind of take the advice and see where it leads you. Play it around in your own head. Um, the reason breakups hurt so much is because it's an identity issue, and this is what I mean by identity. When you're with a person, that person that you're missing, right, deeply, deeply enough to be looking for YouTube videos on exes and breaking up, related to meditation too, interestingly. So you're an interesting human. So the reason they hurt so much is because your identity is kind of dead. You're killing your identity. So I feel like I'm going too advanced on this topic, but what the fuck? I'll just go advanced. I'll just say everything. If you've never meditated or done psychedelics, or if you've never researched it into like this stuff, you won't really know what I'm talking about. If you have, you will know it, and maybe if you've done a lot of it, you will have experienced it. And the thing I'm talking about is ego death. Ego death. Very important concept, and something that's important to have, right? I haven't had a full ego death. I have not. But um, I understand that for sure. This is basic, this is easy. When you miss someone, you're basically your ego, your identity, it changes. The way you view yourself, the way the ego views itself with that person is very pleasant and desirable. And when they're no longer there, the ego can't view itself in that way anymore. It just can't, because that person's no longer there. It for some reason it can't. And that feels like dying. It feels like ego death. Which also, ego death feels like real death. When you're approaching ego death, it'll feel like real death. It'll be very frightening when you even get close to it. The ego does not know the difference between real death and the death of itself, which is desirable and pleasant and good and needed and useful in medicine. It doesn't know the difference between the two. And it also doesn't quite know the difference between a true death of itself and just a minor death, a tiny death. It doesn't think like you and me about amputated arms or amputated legs. It just thinks that any diminishment of itself is like a mini death, and it wants to avoid that. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. Your mind is doing everything it can to avoid that death. It does not want to die. It does not want to die. The part of you that whatever whatever you are with your ex, whatever you fucking are, however you are, however you see yourself, maybe that's whatever you are. I can't even, there's so many things to say. Whether you're a woman or a man, it'll be different depending on your background. But however you want to see yourself, however you want to look at yourself, however you want to be looked at, they looked at you in that way. They looked at you in that way, and no one else looks at you in that way. You don't get that anywhere else. Not from anyone else in your life, and not from yourself either. And it's tough. It's fucking hard, right? It is like dying. It truly is like dying. Because if no one's looking at you that way, you're not that way. And that part of you is dead, literally. So it's very tough. But at the same time, it's not tough at all. What you're running away from, a mini death, is what people like me, people that are into psychedelics, people that are deeply into meditation, mysticism, and spirituality, those people, they seek it, not the mini variety. The mini variety is 2BS. They seek the real variety, a true ego death. They do it maybe through years and years of meditation, taking psychedelics, crazy sports, crazy activities. Who knows? Some do it in sustainable, good, healthy ways. Some do it in fucked up ways. Who knows? But a lot of people are seeking ego death, and it is medicine. It is beautiful. It is beneficial. But you're running away from a mini variety of that when you could appreciate it. You could let it grow you. Let it feed you. But you're not gonna do that yet because you're just not at that stage yet. You're in the suffering stage for now. But that's okay. What you need to do is keep growing and keep learning.